Evie slammed her sketchbook shut. The pages whispering against each other like secrets she could no longer contain. The apartment door hung ajar. A sliver of hallway light spilling in like an uninvited confession. And from the bedroom came a sound she had never heard before. A soft, ragged sob that twisted her stomach into knots. She froze in the living room. Coffee mug halfway to her lips. The bitter steam rising like the doubt she had buried for months. Poppy was curled on the bed. Knees drawn to her chest. Her blonde hair a tangled halo against the pillow. Clutching a crumpled letter in one hand and a half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey in the other. The room smelled of rain-soaked clothes and regret. The window cracked open to let in the distant hum of New York traffic. Evie's heart thudded. Not from fear, but from the raw vulnerability etched into Poppy's face. The kind that stripped away the easy banter they had built their friendship on. She stepped inside. The floorboards creaking under her sneakers. And Poppy's eyes snapped open. Red-rimmed and wide. Locking onto hers with a desperation that made the air thicken. "Evie," she whispered. Voice cracking like thin ice. "I didn't mean for you to see this. God. I left the door open again. Didn't I?" The words hung there. Heavy with everything unsaid. Pulling Evie closer despite the voice in her head screaming to turn away. Evie set her mug on the nightstand. The ceramic clinking softly. And sank onto the edge of the bed. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from Poppy's body. The letter fluttered to the floor. Its edges curling like dying leaves. And Evie caught a glimpse of the words, "Final notice," before Poppy snatched it back. "Your folks again?" she asked. Keeping her tone light. Though her chest ached with the weight of it all. Poppy nodded. A single tear tracing down her cheek. And Evie reached out without thinking. Brushing it away with her thumb. The touch lingering a beat too long. They had been roommates for 2 years now. Thrown together by a Craigslist ad and a shared hatred for overpriced one-bedrooms in Brooklyn. Evie, with her endless freelance gigs designing logos for startups that never quite took off, had always been the steady one. The planner with color-coded calendars pinned to the fridge. Poppy was chaos incarnate. A barista by day who strummed her guitar late into the night. Dreaming of gigs at open mics that turned into sold-out shows. Their lives intertwined in small ways. Shared takeout containers and inside jokes about the super's endless renovations. But lately, Evie had caught herself watching Poppy a little too closely. Memorizing the way her laughter lit up the dim kitchen or how her fingers danced over the strings like they were coaxing stars from the dark. Tonight, though, the air felt charged. Electric with the storm that had passed outside. Leaving puddles on the fire escape. Poppy took a swig from the bottle. Wincing as it burned down. Then offered it to Evie with a shaky hand. "Want some? It's not great. But it does the trick." Evie shook her head. But she didn't pull away when Poppy's shoulder brushed hers. The contact sending a warm spark up her arm. "Talk to me," Evie said softly. Her voice barely above the distant siren wailing below. "What's the letter say this time?" Poppy sighed. A long, weary sound that seemed to deflate her. And leaned back against the headboard. Pulling her knees tighter. "They're cutting me off. For good. Said I've had enough chances to get my act together, whatever that means. No more tuition money for that music program I never even enrolled in. No more rent checks slipping under the table. I'm 26. Evie. What the hell am I supposed to do now?" Her words tumbled out. Laced with bitterness and fear. And Evie felt a pang. Sharp as a paper cut. Because she knew that tone. The one Poppy used to mask the hurt that ran deeper than any chord she could play. Evie shifted closer. Her hand resting on Poppy's knee now. The denim rough under her palm. "Hey. You're not alone in this. We've got each other. Right? I mean, hell. I could use a roommate who doesn't hog the bathroom mirror with her endless eyeliner experiments." It was a weak joke. But it coaxed a small, watery smile from Poppy, who tilted her head to rest against Evie's shoulder. The weight of her there was grounding. Real. And for a moment, Evie forgot about the sketches waiting on her laptop. The deadlines looming like storm clouds. They sat like that as the sky outside deepened to twilight. The city lights flickering on one by one. Painting the walls in golden shadow. Poppy's breathing evened out. Her sobs fading into quiet sniffles. And Evie found herself tracing idle patterns on Poppy's arm. Soft circles that spoke of comfort she hadn't planned to give. You know, Poppy murmured after a while. Her voice muffled against Evie's sweater. I always thought I'd make it big by now. Play at some dive bar in the village. Get scouted by some indie label. But here I am. Slinging lattes and dodging calls from home. Evie's throat tightened. Because she saw it. The fire in Poppy that burned so bright it sometimes singed her own edges. You're talented. Pops. More than you know. Remember that song you wrote last month? The one about the girl chasing fireflies in the rain? It gave me chills. She paused. Her fingers stilling. And Poppy lifted her head. Their faces inches apart now. Breaths mingling in the space between. The room felt smaller. The world narrowing to the flecks of green in Poppy's eyes. The faint scent of vanilla from her shampoo. I wrote that about you, Poppy admitted. The words slipping out like a confession. Soft and unbidden. Evie's breath caught. Her heart stuttering in her chest. And before she could process it, Poppy closed the gap. Her lips brushing Evie's in a tentative kiss that tasted of whiskey and salt and something sweeter. Like hope cracking open. Evie didn't pull away. She leaned in. Her hand cupping Poppy's cheek. The kiss deepening into a slow exploration that left them both breathless. Tangled in sheets and unspoken truths. When they broke apart, foreheads pressed together, Poppy whispered, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I mean, if you don't. But Evie silenced her with another kiss. Fiercer this time. Pouring all the longing she had tucked away into it. Don't apologize, she said against Poppy's mouth. I've wanted this for longer than I care to admit. The admission hung there. Freeing. And they laughed softly. A shared exhale that eased the tension coiling in their limbs. They spent the night like that. Talking in low voices as the city slept. Poppy's head in Evie's lap while Evie ran fingers through her hair. Stories spilled out. Fragments of past heartbreaks and dreams deferred. The letter forgotten on the floor. By dawn, with the first light filtering through the blinds, Evie made a decision. Pack a bag, she said. Her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. We're getting out of here for a bit. Clear our heads. Poppy looked up. Eyes wide with surprise. Where to? Evie grinned. The kind that reached her eyes for the first time in weeks. Anywhere but here. How about the coast? I've got a cousin with a cabin in the Hamptons. 2 days. No phones. Just us. It was impulsive. Born of the night's revelations. But it felt right. A chance to test the fragile thing blooming between them. They hit the road by noon. The rental car humming along I-95. Windows down to let in the salty tang of the approaching ocean. Poppy fiddled with the radio. Settling on a playlist of indie folk that matched the rolling hills blurring past. Evie drove. One hand on the wheel. The other occasionally finding Poppy's across the console. Fingers lacing in silent promise. The city receded in the rear view. Its chaos giving way to open sky and endless blue. And for the first time, Evie felt the weight lift. If only a little. The cabin was a weathered shingle thing. Tucked among dunes with a porch swing creaking in the breeze. They arrived as the sun dipped low. Painting the waves in hues of pink and gold. Poppy kicked off her shoes at the door. Bare feet sinking into the cool wood floors. And pulled Evie into a dance right there in the living room. No music but the crash of surf outside. Laughter bubbled up. Light and unforced. As they spun. Clumsy and close. Until they collapsed onto the rug. Chests heaving. That night, under a quilt stitched with faded stars, they explored each other with the tentative wonder of new lovers. Hands mapping curves and hollows. Whispers turning to sighs in the dark. Poppy's skin was warm silk under Evie's touch. Her gasps a melody that Evie committed to memory. Stay with me, Poppy breathed as they lay spent. Limbs entwined. Not just tonight. For real. Evie kissed her temple. The salt of her skin lingering on her lips. I'm not going anywhere. But morning brought the first crack. Subtle as a hairline fracture in glass. Over coffee on the porch. Watching gulls wheel overhead. Poppy's phone buzzed with a text from her ex. The one who had ghosted her 6 months back. Evie saw the name flash. Lila, and felt a twinge. Irrational but sharp. Old flame, she asked. Trying for casual. But her voice came out edged. Poppy hesitated. Then nodded. pocketing the phone. Nothing. Just checking in. The lie hung there. Unspoken. And Evie swallowed her unease, focusing on the foam cresting the waves. They spent the day wandering the beach. Toes in the surf. Collecting shells that clinked in Poppy's pocket like tiny bells. Evie sketched the horizon. Charcoal smudging her fingers. While Poppy hummed tunes she was piecing together. Lyrics about lost coasts and found hearts. Lunch was lobster rolls from a shack down the road. Eaten on a weathered picnic table. Grease dripping onto paper plates as they traded stories of childhood summers. Poppy's in the Midwest cornfields. Evie's in Jersey Shore boardwalks. By evening, though, the text lingered like a shadow. As they cooked pasta in the tiny kitchen, steam rising from the pot, Evie couldn't hold it in. You don't have to pretend with me. You know. About Lila. Poppy froze. Wooden spoon mid-stir. Her shoulders tensing. It's nothing, Evie. She just wants to catch up. The words were too quick. Too defensive. And Evie set down the knife she was using to chop basil. The blade clattering on the board. Catch up? After what she did to you? Evie's voice rose despite her efforts. The hurt spilling out. Poppy turned. Eyes flashing with frustration. You don't get it. It's not like that. She's sorry. Okay? And I don't know. Maybe I need closure. The air thickened. The sizzle of garlic in the pan the only sound breaking the silence. Evie felt the ground shift beneath her. The trust they had built in one night feeling suddenly fragile. They ate in quiet. Forks scraping plates. The meal tasteless now. Poppy pushed her food around. Then stood abruptly. Grabbing her jacket. I'm going for a walk. Clear my head. The door clicked shut behind her. Leaving Evie with the echo of waves and a hollow ache in her chest. She washed the dishes mechanically. Suds bubbling over her hands. Tears mixing with the rinse water. How had it unraveled so fast? Was this what it meant to let someone in? To hand over pieces of yourself only to watch them slip? Poppy returned hours later. Hair windswept. Cheeks flushed from the chill. She found Evie on the porch. Wrapped in a blanket. Staring at the stars pricking the velvet sky. I'm sorry, Poppy said. Sinking beside her. Voice small. I shouldn't have snapped. Lila. She's part of my past. But you're my now. If you'll have me. Evie turned. Searching her face in the moonlight. Seeing the sincerity there. The fear mirroring her own. They talked then. Really talked. Words pouring like rain after drought. Poppy admitted the pull of old habits. The comfort of familiarity. Even when it hurt. Evie confessed her own scars. The girlfriend who had left her for a safer life back in Ohio. The doubt that whispered she wasn't enough. Sobs came. Shared and cathartic. Arms wrapping around each other as the ocean murmured approval. When they kissed, it was different. Deeper. Forged in fire. The next day, they drove back to the city with the windows up. Hands clasped tight. Brooklyn welcomed them with its familiar grit. The apartment a sanctuary now. Not a cage. Poppy tossed the letter in the trash that first night. A symbolic gesture. And Evie helped her update her resume. Fingers flying over keys as they dreamed up barista gigs that came with health insurance and maybe even stage time. Weeks blurred into a rhythm. Tentative at first. Then steady. Mornings started with coffee brewed strong. Poppy's lips brushing Evie's neck as she poured. Evenings ended with guitar strings humming under their joined hands. Poppy teaching Evie chords that sounded like love songs. The kiss that had started it all evolved into something solid. A foundation they built on with date nights at hole-in-the-wall Takarius and lazy Sundays in bed. Sheets tangled around legs. But life, Evie learned, didn't unfold in neat arcs. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rumbled over the East River, Poppy's phone rang with her mother's number. She answered, voice steady, and Evie listened from the couch, sketchpad forgotten in her lap. The conversation was clipped. Words like disappointed and choices slicing through the static. When Poppy hung up, she slid down the wall, back against the peeling wallpaper, face buried in her hands. Evie was there in an instant, kneeling, pulling her close. What happened? Poppy's shoulders shook, breaths hitching. She said I'm throwing my life away. With the music. With you. Called it a phase. Like I'm some kid playing pretend. The pain in her voice was a knife. Twisting in Evie's gut. She held tighter. Rocking gently. Murmuring nonsense about how phases could become forever if you let them. That night? They lay awake. Rain pattering the window like impatient fingers. Poppy traced Evie's collarbone. A habit now. And whispered. Do you ever worry we'll crash and burn? That this is too good? Too fast? Evie considered it. The fear a quiet undercurrent. But she turned. Cupping Poppy's face. Every day. But then I look at you. And I think. Worth it. All of it. Spring crept in. Tentative green shoots pushing through concrete cracks. Mirroring the growth between them. Evie landed a big contract. Designing album art for an up-and-coming band. And celebrated by surprising Poppy with tickets to a show at Bowery Ballroom. They dressed up. Evie in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves. Poppy in a vintage leather jacket over a silk blouse. Hair loose and wild. The venue pulsed with energy. Bodies pressed close. Bass thrumming through their bones. Mid-set. As the lead singer wailed about lost loves reclaimed. Poppy pulled Evie into the crowd's heart. Their bodies swaying in sync. Sweat-slicked skin. Shared breaths. The world fading to just them. I love you, Poppy mouthed over the roar. And Evie kissed her fierce. Tasting salt and smoke and certainty. The words echoed back. I love you too, a vow swallowed by the music. But shadows lingered. Poppy's gigs were sporadic. Rejection emails piling up like unpaid bills. One night. After a no-show at a coffeehouse open mic. She came home hollow-eyed. Guitar case slamming against the wall. They don't want me. Evie. My sound. My stories. Too raw. Too queer for their polished playlists. She paced. Voice rising. Fists clenched. Evie tried to soothe. Arms open. But Poppy shrugged her off. Storming to the bedroom. Evie followed. Heart pounding. Finding Poppy curled on the fire escape. Rain soaking her through. Let me in, Evie pleaded. Sliding the window wider. Stepping out into the downpour. Water streamed down their faces. Mingling with tears. Poppy looked up. Shattered. What if I drag you down with me? You deserve stability. Not this mess. Evie knelt. Water pooling around her knees. And took Poppy's hands. Cold and trembling. You're not a mess. You're my muse. My fire. We rise together or not at all. The fight dissolved into embraces. Wet clothes clinging as they stumbled inside. Peeling layers away in a frenzy of need and reassurance. Lovemaking that night was urgent. Bodies speaking what words couldn't. A reclaiming in the storm's aftermath. Summer arrived with heat waves shimmering off asphalt. And they escaped to the Adirondacks. A gift from Evie's cousin. A tent pitched by a glassy lake. Days blurred into hikes through pine-scented trails. Nights around a crackling fire. Marshmallows toasting golden as stories unfolded. Poppy wrote a new song there. Fingers plucking strings by firelight. Lyrics about bridges burned and rebuilt. Evie illustrated it later. Watercolors capturing the lake's shimmer. A gift for the demo she urged Poppy to record. Back in the city. Progress crept forward. Poppy landed a steady spot at a queer-owned cafe in Williamsburg. Slinging drinks with flair. Tips funding studio time. Evie mentored her on branding. Logos sharp and evocative. Their apartment evolved. Walls adorned with Polaroids of stolen moments. A shared vision board pinned with tour dates and gallery shows. Yet doubt whispered still. One crisp fall evening. As leaves skittered across Washington Square Park. Poppy got the call. A scout from a small label. Impressed by her SoundCloud tracks. Wanted a meeting. Elation lit her face. Phone pressed to ear. But Evie saw the undercurrent of fear. What if they hate me in person? Poppy fretted later. Pacing their living room. Evie pulled her down. Legs tangled on the couch. Then we pivot. But you'll shine. You always do. The meeting was in a sleek midtown office. Glass walls overlooking skyscrapers. Evie waited in a cafe across the street. Sketching nervously. Heart in her throat. Hours later. Poppy burst in. Grinning wide. Cheeks flushed. They want 3 tracks. A real deal. Evie. Entry level. But it's something. They celebrated with street cart hot dogs. Mustard dripping. Kisses stolen in alley shadows. Winter blanketed the city in snow. Muffling sounds. Amplifying closeness. Holiday lights twinkled from their window. A string draped over the guitar. Poppy's family sent a card. Stiff and formal. No mention of her life. But she framed it anyway. A quiet act of defiance. Evie's folks visited. Awkward at first over eggnog. But warming when Poppy played carols. Voice rich and inviting. One blizzard night. Snow piling high. They hunkered down with hot cocoa and old movies. Bundled under blankets. Poppy paused the screen midway through some rom-com. Turning serious. "Marry me," she asked. Half joking. Ring pull tab from a soda can glinting in her palm. Evie laughed. Then sobered. Seeing the truth beneath. "Someday," she promised. Slipping it on her finger. "When the world's ready. Or when we say it is." Spring bloomed again. 2 years since that door left open. And with it? Poppy's EP dropped. Vinyl spinning on their turntable. The launch party was at a loft in Bushwick. Bodies packed tight. Air humming with chatter. Evie watched from the sidelines. Pride swelling as Poppy took the mic. Dedicating the title track to "The Girl Who Found Me When I Was Lost." Eyes met across the room. A lifetime in that gaze. Later. On the rooftop. City sprawled below like a glittering promise. Poppy leaned into Evie. Wind tugging her hair. "We made it," she murmured. Voice thick. Evie nodded. Arm around her waist. "And we're just getting started." The future stretched open. Not without storms. But shared. A tapestry woven from threads of doubt and desire. Stronger for the weaving. In quiet moments. Evie still remembered that sob. The letter. The kiss. It was the unexpected that had cracked them open. Letting light in. And in the end? It was enough. More than enough. The EP's release marked a turning point. Not just for Poppy's music. But for the delicate balance they had struck in their shared life. Fans trickled in at first. Drawn by the raw honesty in her lyrics. The way her voice cracked on the high notes like a heart under strain. Evie handled the merch table at shows. Stacking CDs with handwritten notes tucked inside. Her designs popping against the black tees. Pride mingled with a quiet anxiety. Watching Poppy navigate the spotlight. Her laughter brighter but her eyes sometimes distant. Chasing the next chord. One humid July evening. They piled into a van with the band for a string of East Coast dates. The kind of grassroots tour that smelled of diesel and diner coffee. Evie tagged along as unofficial roadie and moral support. Sketching in the passenger seat while Poppy dozed against her shoulder. Earbuds in. Humming faintly. Stops blurred, a dive in Philly where the mic feedback howled like a wounded animal. A park in Baltimore under threat of rain. Where kids sat cross-legged on blankets. Mesmerized. In Richmond. After a set that left the crowd roaring. Poppy pulled Evie backstage. Into a storage room stacked with amps. "Come here," she said. Voice husky from singing. Hands framing Evie's face. The kiss was electric. Charged with adrenaline. Bodies pressing close until the door rattled with knocks. They emerged flushed. Poppy wiping lipstick from her chin. Evie smoothing her shirt. Sharing secret smiles amid the chaos. But the road tested them. Miles stretching tempers thin. In a motel outside D.C. With peeling wallpaper and a bed that sagged in the middle. An argument erupted over nothing. A forgotten charger sparking into accusations. "You're always sketching. Always in your head," Poppy snapped. Pacing the thin carpet. "Do you even see me anymore?" Evie recoiled. Hurt flaring. "I see you every day. Pouring your soul into this. But sometimes I need space to breathe." Pops. We're not fused at the hip. Silence fell heavy. Broken only by the hum of the AC unit. Poppy sank onto the bed. Head in hands. And Evie joined her. The fight fizzling into apologies whispered against skin. They made up slowly. Touches tentative. Rebuilding the bridge with words and warmth. "I get scared," Poppy admitted. Fingers tracing Evie's spine. "That you'll wake up and realize I'm not enough." Evie kissed her forehead. Fierce. "You're everything." The rest is just noise. Back in Brooklyn by August, the apartment felt like home again. Walls echoing with new stories. Poppy's label pushed for a single. Co-writing sessions in cramped studios where egos clashed like cymbals. Evie sat in, offering quiet input. Her eye for detail sharpening lyrics into something visual. Evocative. One night, post-session, they walked the bridge at midnight. Manhattan's glow a distant fire. Hands swinging between them. Fall brought changes Evie hadn't anticipated. A gallery in Soho reached out. Impressed by her album art. Offering a solo show. Panic set in. Her studio overflowing with half-finished canvases. Sleep elusive. Poppy became the rock then. Bringing takeout and foot rubs. Strumming lullabies until Evie's breaths evened. "You've got this," she'd say. Tucking a stray hair behind Evie's ear. "Your world's as big as mine." The opening was a whirlwind. White walls stark against her bold strokes. Colors bleeding emotion. Friends mingled with strangers. Champagne flutes clinking. And Poppy hovered. Proud and poised in a borrowed suit. A collector bought 3 pieces. Check in hand. And Evie found Poppy in the back alley. Leaning against brick. Cigarette dangling unlit. "Holy shit," Poppy breathed as Evie approached. "You're a star." They celebrated in a jazz club nearby. Saxophones wailing low. Bodies swaying close. The night's magic lingering like smoke. Winter holidays loomed. Fraught with family pulls. Poppy's parents extended a reluctant invite to Ohio. Neutral ground promised. Evie encouraged it. Masking her nerves. "Go. Show them the woman you've become." Poppy flew out. Returning 2 days early. Hollow-cheeked but unbroken. It was civil, she reported over mulled wine. Curled on the couch. "Mom asked about you. Said she saw the EP review in some music mag. Progress. Small but seismic." Evie's turn came for Jersey. Her folks warmer. A tree trimmed with ornaments from her childhood. Poppy charmed them over lax. Guitar in hand for sing-alongs. Her voice wrapping the room in unexpected joy. On the drive back. Snow dusting the windshield. Evie glanced over. "They love you." Poppy squeezed her thigh. "Good. Because I'm in it for the long haul." Spring 2027 dawned with opportunity knocking louder. Poppy's single charted low on college radio. A buzz that led to festival slots. Evie juggled commissions. Her name whispered in design circles. They splurged on a weekend in the Berkshires. A B&B with clawfoot tubs and mountain views. Where they hiked trails lined with wildflowers. Picnicking on cheese and crusty bread. There, under a canopy of budding leaves, Poppy proposed for real. A simple silver band glinting in her palm. Bought with first royalty check. "Not because of the world," she said. Kneeling on mossy ground. Eyes shining. "Because of us." Evie pulled her up. Yes on her lips before the question finished. Tears salting their kiss. They drove home engaged. Ring catching light. A promise etched in metal. Summer tours ramped up. Poppy headlining small venues. Evie opening for visual projections. Their worlds converging. Backstage in Providence. After a rain-delayed set. Poppy found Evie amid cables. Pulling her into shadows. "Marry me tomorrow," she joked. But the heat in her eyes was serious. Evie laughed. Breathless. Vegas. The idea stuck. A elopement whispered over late-night calls when apart. Fall leaves turned the drive to Chicago a postcard. The city welcoming with wind-whipped streets. A justice of the peace in a courthouse. Witnesses strangers off the L train. And they said vows in a room smelling of old books. Rings exchanged. Simple gold bands. And they emerged husband. No. Wives. Into a crisp day. Hands clasped tight. Dinner was deep dish pizza. Greasy and glorious. Toasts with soda from paper cups. Back east. Life settled into married rhythm. Apartment upgraded to a 1-bedroom in Greenpoint. Space for a shared office. Poppy's album Too Brood. Evie illustrating the cover. A couple silhouetted against city lights. Challenges came. A label dispute over creative control leaving Poppy drained. Nights where she paced. Voice raw from arguments. Evie held space. Listening without fixing. Her own deadlines a quiet storm. One blizzard evening. Power out. They lit candles. Board games by flicker. Laughter chasing shadows. "We're okay," Poppy said, drawing Evie close. "Even when it's hard." Evie nodded, chin on her shoulder. "Especially then." Spring brought Poppy's tour to the West Coast. Evie joining for legs. Sketching coastlines from van windows. In Portland? A queer folk fest. They performed a duet. Poppy's guitar backing Evie's spoken word piece. Voices blending like old souls. Crowd cheered. But the real magic was after. In a tiny motel? Bodies familiar yet new. Love deepened by miles. Summer heat peaked with a house concert in their building. Neighbors spilling onto the roof. Stars overhead. Poppy played unplugged. Evie beside her. Harmonica in hand. A skill picked up on whim. Songs wove personal. Tales of doors ajar and hearts found. Drawing sighs and claps. Fall harvest meant a trip to Poppy's family farm. Tentative reconciliation. Fields golden. Air thick with earth. Her mother hugged Evie first. Tentative thaw. Over pie. Stories exchanged. Bridges mending slow. Poppy's father nodded approval at her latest track. Played on a crackly radio. Winter wrapped them in quiet. Snow blanketing stoops. Holidays homegrown with friends. New Year's. They watched fireworks from the bridge. Arms linked. Resolutions unspoken but shared, keep choosing each other. By spring's return. 3 years wed. Poppy's second album dropped to acclaim. Tours balanced with home. Evie opened a studio. Teaching workshops. Her art in galleries coast to coast. Life wasn't perfect. Arguments flared over tour schedules. Doubts crept in quiet hours. But they met them head-on. Therapy sessions in a sunlit office. Tools to navigate. One anniversary. Back at the cabin. They renewed vows on the beach. Waves lapping ankles. No rings but promises renewed. To unexpected doors, Poppy toasted with shells clinking. Evie smiled. Pulling her close. And what lies beyond? The years following their elopement layered on like sedimentary rock. Each season adding depth to the strata of their union. Poppy's career gained altitude. Her voice a fixture on playlists. Tours stretching to Europe. Where Evie joined for jaunts through cobblestone streets. Sketching cafes in Paris. Holding hands under London rain. Homecomings were rituals. Airport hugs fierce. Suitcases spilling souvenirs and stories. Evie's design firm bloomed. Clients from indie labels to nonprofits. Her style a blend of whimsy and grit. She mentored young artists. Queer kids with fire in their eyes. Echoing her own start. Balance was the dance. Calendars synced. Date nights carved from chaos. A rooftop garden they tended. Tomatoes ripening red as summer waned. Challenges evolved. Not vanished. Poppy's spotlight brought scrutiny. Tabloid whispers of flings that stung like paper cuts. One night in LA. After a gala where flashes blinded. Poppy came back to their hotel late. Reeking of champagne and stranger's perfume. Evie waited. Arms crossed. Voice steady. Who was she? Poppy deflated. Spilling apologies. The flirtation a shield against imposter nerves. They talked till dawn. Tears and truths. Emerging closer. Boundaries redrawn. A miscarriage in their 5th year hit harder. A quiet grief that hollowed rooms. Poppy withdrew into music. Chords dark and minor. While Evie filled canvases with abstract swirls of blue. Friends rallied. Casseroles and cards. But healing was private. Walks in Prospect Park. Hands linked over strollers they borrowed from neighbors. Someday, Evie whispered one leaf-strewn afternoon. And Poppy nodded. Chin on her shoulder. Our someday. Adoption talks surfaced tentative. Agencies navigated. Home studies endured. Paperwork mountains. Interviews probing. But they persisted. Hearts open. A call came in autumn. A 3-year-old boy from foster care. Dark curls and wary eyes. Placement was trial. Nights of stories and nightmares. But love rooted deep. They named him Theo. After a melody Poppy hummed in labor dreams. Parenting reshaped them. Sleep fractured. Days a blur of daycare drop-offs and finger paints. Evie worked from home more. Poppy scaled tours to weekends. Her songs now laced with lullabies. Theo's laughter filled the apartment. Chubby hands smudging art. Tiny feet pattering to guitar strums. Holidays amplified. Trees trimmed low for his reach. Easters with egg hunts in the hall. Theo's questions came early. Innocent barbs. Why two moms, over breakfast? Syrup sticky on his chin. Poppy fielded with ease. Because love comes in all shapes. Kiddo. Like puzzle pieces fitting just right. Evie watched. Chest swelling. The humanism of it all. Building a world where difference was default. Career pulse tugged still. A major label courted Poppy. Deal glittering with promises. But strings attached. Creative reins tightened. She agonized. Studio sessions tense. Evie mediating calls. Her business acumen a steady hand. Your voice, Evie urged over takeout. Don't let them mute it. Poppy walked. Choosing indie roots. Integrity over gold. Evie's exhibit in Chelsea drew crowds. Pieces exploring queer domesticity. Theo's toys woven into abstracts. Critics praised the intimacy. But online trolls spewed venom. Words like weapons. Poppy shielded. Socials set private. But nights brought Evie's sobs. Body curled small. They're wrong, Poppy murmured. Holding tight. Your revolution in color. Strength borrowed. Returned tenfold. Summers became family escapes. Road trips to national parks. Zion's red rocks under Theo's odd gaze. Campfires crackled. Esmores charred. Stories spun of door left open origins. Sanitized for tiny ears. And then you found each other, Theo would chime. Eyes wide. And they'd nod. Hands clasped across flames. Fall festivals dotted calendars. Poppy headlining pride events. Evie designing banners. Theo waving flags with painted faces. 1 year in San Francisco. Rainbow streets alive. Theo danced between them. A bridge of joy. Backstage. Amid confetti. Poppy kissed Evie slow. This. Us. Him. It's the song I never knew to write. Winters soften with routine. Snowmen in the yard. Hot chocolate mustaches. Theo's school plays cast him as tree in a forest. Applause thundering as he swayed. Doubts surfaced in quiet. Poppy's voice therapy for vocal strain. Evie's imposter pangs amid acclaim. They leaned. A teeter-totter of support. Equilibrium found in vulnerability. Spring renewals brought Theo's adoption final. Courtroom solemn. Judges gavel a blessing. Papers signed. Family sealed. They celebrated with ice cream towers. Theo's grin chocolate smeared. Forever now, he asked. Spoon paused. Poppy ruffled his hair. Double forever. Growth marked years. Poppy's memoir in works. Ghostwriter sessions spilling heart onto pages. Evie illustrated chapters. Vignettes of resilience. Launch was intimate. Brooklyn bookstore packed. Theo passing books. Fans queuing for signatures. Readings drew tears. Shared pains. The room a tapestry of lives touched. Challenges morphed. Theo's tween angst budding. Questions deeper on identity. Bullies at school whispering slurs. They navigated with counselors. Bookshelves stocked diverse. Talks open as dawn. Poppy wrote a children's album. Tracks empowering. Theo's voice guesting on chorus. Evie's workshops expanded. School programs fostering art as armor. Across country move tempted. LA's industry pull. But Brooklyn held. Roots deep in brownstone soil. Instead, sabbaticals. Months unplugging in Vermont cabins. Writing retreats where Poppy penned. Evie painted. Theo built forts from fallen leaves. Anniversaries stacked. 10th vow renewal on that first beach. Theo scattering petals. Waves applauding. Rings polished. Promises evolved, through griefs and graces. To continue choosing. Dinner seaside. Lobster cracking. Laughter loud. Theo's teens brought tempests. First crush a boy with braces. Confusion swirling. They listened. No judgment. Poppy sharing her own fumblings. Evie affirming fluidity. Heartbreak came swift. Tears over ice cream. But resilience bloomed. Theo's art echoing Evie's. Guitar riffs Poppy's kin. Careers peaked. Poppy Grammy nominated. Red carpet surreal. Evie beside in tailored gown. Theo beaming from home via stream. Win or not. The nod validated. A whisper that doors left open led here. Winters warmed with age. Gray threading hair. Lines etching smiles. Theo off to college. Dorm unpacked with hugs lingering. Empty nest echoed at first. But they filled with travels. Italy's hills. Japan's cherry blossoms. Hands still seeking in sleep. Reflections came in quiet. Poppy's fingers arthritic on strings. Evie's eyes straining at easel. Worth the unexpected? Poppy asked one dawn. Coffee steaming. Evie leaned in. Kiss soft. Every sigh. Every storm. Legacy unfolded. Foundations funded for queer artists. Scholarships in Theo's name someday. Their story. Once private. Inspired panels. Books. A life examined but owned. In the end, as autumn leaves fell golden, they sat porch-bound. Grandson on knee. Poppy humming faint. Evie sketching his tiny form. The door to memory ajar. What lay beyond still surprised. A life richly lived. Humanistic echo lingering long. Decades wove forward. Threads fraying yet holding. Their love a tapestry enduring. Theo's life branched. Career in environmental law. His fire channeled to causes green and just. Weddings came. His to a partner kind-eyed. Vows echoing theirs. Brooklyn backyard alight with lanterns. Grandkids followed. 2 girls with Poppy's curls. A boy with Evie's freckles. Chaos joyful in their expanding home. Poppy's voice softened with years. Tours retired to lectures. Masterclasses where she mentored. Guitar passed to eager hands. Evie curated exhibits. Traveling shows of their joint works. Panels on partnership in art. Bookshelves groaned under memoirs. Hers on design's heart. Poppy's on melody's soul. Co-authored chapters intertwining. Health intruded gentle. Then insistent. Poppy's joints protesting rain. Evie's vision blurring edges. Doctor's visits routine. Hands held in sterile weights. Laughter defying diagnoses. We've outrun worse, Poppy quipped post-MRI. Squeezing Evie's palm. Summers lingered in the Hamptons cabin. Now there's grandchildren digging clams. Stories retold by fire pits. Tell the door one again, the oldest begged. And Poppy obliged. Voice rich. Evie adding flourishes. The unexpected a fairy tale gilded. Fall harvests meant farm visits. Ohio kin reconciled. Tables laden with pies. Generations mingling. Poppy's mother, frail now, held her hand. Proud, she whispered once. Tears shared. Forgiveness a late bloom. Winters cozied. Holidays evolved. Menorah beside tree. Traditions blended. Grandkids plays. Amateur guitars. Evie's illustrations gifting personalized tales. New Year's toasts with cider. Resolutions to savor. Not strive. Theo's family grew. Visits frequent. Debates lively over dinners. Politics and passions aired. They mediated gentle. Wisdom earned in living. Losses came. Friends fading. Griefs mourned in quiet walks. Central Park benches memorials. Anniversaries golden. 50th a cruise. Ocean vast. Vows whispered on deck. Stars witnesses. Rings worn thin. But fit true. Dances slow to ship's band. Bodies familiar terrain. Philanthropy deepened. Centers named for them. Queer youth hubs with art rooms. Music stages. Visits brought tears. Teens sharing dreams. Echoes of youth. You gave us doors, one said. And Evie hugged her. Poppy nodding beside. Travel slowed. But joys localized. Farmers markets. Coffee with Theo. Park picnics. Poppy's compositions archived. Evie's portfolio donated. Legacies living beyond. One spring. Cherry blossoms peak. Poppy faltered. Heart's rhythm off. Hospital beeps stark. Evie by bed. Hand clasped. Grandkids drawing cards. Not yet, Poppy murmured. Eyes twinkling. Recovery slow. But homecoming sweeter. Meals adaptive. Love undimmed. Summers gentle. Porch swings creaking. Books read aloud. Chapters traded. Fall colors vivid. Drives leaf peeping. Windows down. Wind and silver hair. Winter's chill prompted moves south. Florida condo sun warmed. Beaches soft. Grandkids visited. Sandcastles built. Stories seaside. Ages advanced. Memories selective. Names forgotten but feelings held. Poppy's songs hummed faint. Evie's sketches bold still. Caregivers came kind. But core was them. Touches lingering. Final autumn. Leaves drifting. Poppy slipped quiet. Evie's hand in hers. Breath easing. Grief vast. But graced. Funeral a celebration. Songs sung. Art displayed. Theo eulogized. They taught us unexpected grace. Evie carried on. Studio sunlit. Canvases capturing Poppy's ghost. Smiles and strokes. Letters from fans. Lives touched. A web spun wide. Years later. At 90. Evie joined her. Bed soft. Visions dancing. Door ajar once more. What lay beyond? Reunion. Arms open. Love eternal. The echo remained. Humanistic hush. Reminding that in openness. Beauty unforeseen unfolds. Hearts entwined forever.